going into the people that we would buy.
The buys, the buy lows.
Buys. How about we, one of the wide receivers you mentioned in the whole Langford spiel was Sterling Shepard.
Ooh, a buy on Sterling Shepard.
What do you think?
I like that quite a bit. I think I've kind of flip-flopped a little bit on Sterling Shepard. After week 1, I would have called him...
Floppies.
I was kind of calling him a sell after week 1 because I saw Cruz sort of emerging and being like a version of himself. And I was like, oh, this is like a 2A, 2B. I don't know. They're going to cannibalize each other. He got a touchdown, get rid of him. But then week 2, I mean, it's against the Saints, who are like just a truly awful defense. So it's like, take it with a grain of salt. But still, he plays 94% of snaps. He gets 8 targets, catches all of them for 117 yards. He was like clearly the like actual number 2 in that offense, at least for 1 week. He was sort of a touchdown away from having a monster game. And that's kind of what I like to target when I'm looking for buy lows at any position is high yardage, lots of targets, high snap percentages, but no touchdown. Because that's sort of like, they end up like at around like 10, 11 points. So people that don't really read the full stat line or look into it are like, he was okay. But, the touchdowns are coming unless you're Melvin Gordon last year. He's going to get touchdowns. I'd say probably like 50% of the time would be my guess. I think 8 to 10 touchdowns is a fair guess for Sterling Shepard on the season.
Yeah, I mean, in the words of Edard Stark, touchdown is coming.
Touchdown is coming. So I think in some ways, he's kind of a prime buy low because, it's 10 fantasy points last week, 11 this week. So he's probably being viewed as like a low-end wide receiver 2 or like a flex. People probably look at him as like their wide receiver 3. But I think he kind of vaults up into like a pretty firm wide receiver 2 the rest of the way. So, the reason he's a buy this week is because they're going up against the Washingtons. And
the Denzel Washingtons.
The Denzel Washingtons. And whereas in week 1 and 2, Norman just played his side of the field, they specifically said Norman's going to shadow Odell the whole game. They're just like, nope, we're going to take Odell out of it. That's it. And so who's he going to go to? Odell will still get his. He'll still, Eli's not afraid to throw to Odell under any situation. But, Shepard is going to be against Breland, who's been getting burned so far all season. So I think that we're going to see a similar stat line to last week. But now, if he gets a touchdown, then all of a sudden everyone's like, whoa, wait a second. 16, 17 fantasy points from Sterling Shepard. Who is this guy? What? And then, it's too late to buy low. Then you're buying him at value.
I mean, Sterling Shepard, the best rookie wide receiver not named Corey Coleman.
Poor Corey Coleman.
Corey Coleman. Man. We could have a whole segment on just how sad the Browns season has been so far.
Yeah.
I mean, I legitimately feel bad for Cleveland fans right now. That's just a shit show, what is going on for them. But anyway, Sterling Shepard, I like it. I mean, you were saying that it could be a 2A, 2B with Victor Cruz. Why not a 1A, 1B with Sterling and Odell?
Hey, man, so far this season, that's kind of how it's looked. I think the sort of the real silver lining here is that this offense is actually humming along really well, and I think it can kind of support 3 wide receivers maybe because we saw Cruz got 8 targets last week too and had a nice little game. Odell had 11 targets and had 86 yards on it, no touchdown also. But all 3 of them actually had pretty productive weeks. It was just who got the touchdown, and it happened to be didn't Cruz get the touchdown last week, right? So I think this is actually an offense that can support all 3 of them, which is the outcome that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, and Eli's just going to be slinging it.
Yeah.
I mean, just piggybacking off of this, thinking about the whole offense in general, it could mean that Rashad is going to come out of his slump eventually. If they're slinging the ball down the field with authority, then teams are going to have to respect that. Theoretically, that should open up the running game. I'm just imagining a situation where my newly acquired piece, Rashad Jennings, puts up a monster week against Washington, which could also happen. But I like the Shep as a buy. Who else would we have as a buy low?
I think a perfect buy low, because you could actually get him for very cheap. Like Shep, you kind of have to pay up like a running back 3 probably to get him, or a running back 4. Like you're giving up something that has some value, but a perfect buy low that you can get for dirt cheap probably would be
Arian Foster.
Now, let's do a price check on John Smokey Brown.
The price check would be free.
It'd be free, yeah.
It would be free at this point. John Smokey Brown, somebody we've been beating the drum of all off season.
Yeah.
He's been off to an abysmal start, but it's not like we should have not seen this coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it should have been relatively expected because he missed the entire offseason. The Arizona offense has been struggling, or they were struggling until, I guess, last week.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the New England game, they didn't look like themselves. Like, they put up a better performance in the second half of that game, but then last week they kind of turned it on a little bit against Tampa. So you were talking about this off air, but week 1 was essentially John Brown's first preseason game, and it looked that way. I mean, he only got targeted 4 times, had 1 catch for 8 yards. Last week wasn't much better, to be fair.
No.
He only had 1 catch. This time was for 14 yards. But so far he's been outplayed by the other Jay Brown on that team.
Jerome Brown.
Yeah. So John Brown is free at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Or he should be. I mean, you should be able to get him for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
And I think now, this week, we'll start to see his usage kind of slowly climb.
Yeah.
I know we kind of mentioned this last week. We might have been a little bit preemptive with that. I think it's going to come within the next few weeks because really this is still preseason for John Brown.
Yeah.
Article came out that was talking about how he doesn't really feel like himself in terms of being in game shape yet because he didn't have an offseason. But he's just starting to get to that point now, entering week 3. So I think he is definitely a prime target to buy low just because of how low you can get him right now. I mean, low. I mean, he might be on the waiver wire, or he might have been on the waiver wire.
I wouldn't be shocked. I think we're probably a week or 2 away from people just straight up dropping him. But yeah, you could get him for so cheap, and he has an incredibly soft matchup this week in Buffalo, who we saw just get lit up by the Fitzpatricks last week.
Like a Christmas tree.
Like a Christmas tree. So that's kind of why he's a buy right now instead of like, well, wait another week, Let his value get even more depressed. Maybe you can just pick him up for free. But yeah, this could be a matchup where he, we saw the Jets just throwing deep all over Buffalo with ease. We could very well see that happening in this game with the Cardinals. And if John Brown plays more snaps, which, reports suggest he will, then all he needs to do is catch one 60-yard touchdown, and all of a sudden, John Brown's back, and then he's not, he's not cheap anymore.
Yeah, the hype is back. I mean, he is one of those hypey players. A lot of analysts have been kind of on John Brown, conveniently have been off him lately, when the players don't perform. We just forget that we ever talked about them. Mm-hmm. But John Brown this week against Buffalo, like you said, I mean, we saw guys like, Greg Salas?
Yeah, he got 2 touchdowns, didn't he? I think he did.
Yeah, I mean, just eating them alive in the deep game.
Marquise Goodwin. It was a bizarre game to watch because I picked up. Oh no, that was Buffalo lighting up the Jets. But yeah, it was a weird game because it was
back and forth.
Yeah, Anunwa was just eating all over them.
But yeah, I think Brown has a chance. I mean, he is kind of the deep threat on that team. We know that Fitzgerald is their slot receiver. And to be honest, Floyd has kind of underperformed as well. Yeah. He put up a line of 2 catches for 8 yards last week, but he was saved by a touchdown.
Yeah.
Which is concerning because Michael Floyd was, I mean, I think ADP-wise, he might have been the highest of the Arizona wide receivers going into the season.
He was very hyped up.
John Brown was the lowest, I believe.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah, I think it went Floyd, Fitz,
and then Brown.
Yeah, because Floyd and Fitz were like right side by side, and then John Brown was like a round or 2 later. Floyd, I'm kind of out on Floyd. I'm not really buying low on him because he's, as far as we know, he's healthy. He played all of preseason, and he is right now. He should be benefiting from John Brown not being himself, and he's not. He's not performing. So yeah, I think Floyd might be a sell, but the problem is that Floyd's name isn't. I feel like it's not as hypey as John Brown's because he only did it for half a season.
Yeah, John Brown. I don't really know why his ADP was so low. I mean, before the concussion news came out, then it made sense.
Yeah.
But even before that, his ADP was lower than Floyd's. It was lower than Fitzgerald's. And he looked like the best wide receiver towards the end of the season for Arizona before Floyd kind of went on his like mini hot streak towards the end.
Yeah.
But there was the time from when Fitzgerald, like the midway point of the season, where he kind of cooled down, and then to the point where Floyd kind of took off, where Brown was the clear number one receiver in Arizona. Analysts love him because of his quickness off the line of scrimmage, his route running capabilities. He's a smaller guy, but he's able to get open, kind of in the same mold that like an Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown gets open. He's quick. He's shifty at the line of scrimmage. He's a good route runner. Both of them aren't really big guys. I'm not saying John Brown's Antonio Brown, even though they have the same last name. But
You're not saying that, but you are saying that.
But I am saying that. Just like I'm going to say that Dwayne Washington is David Johnson.
Yeah.
In a minute here. But we'll get to that later in the show. But yeah, John Brown, I guess to summarize the situation, if you have John Brown, you should definitely hold on to him because the likelihood is that you didn't draft him to really be a starter. You might have drafted him as your wide receiver 3, somewhere around the 6th or 7th round. And if that's the case, then he's not hurting you yet, unless you're dealing with a wave of injuries.
Yeah.
You can afford to leave him on the bench because he is still more valuable than anyone you can pick up on the waiver wire at this point, unless somebody is a complete numbskull. Go back to 3rd grade for a minute and dropped, like an amazing player. But, I mean, look at all the waiver wire ads. I mean, would you rather have like Brandon LaFell or John Brown?
I'd rather have John Brown. Yeah,
John Brown. Would you rather have who else was a hot wide receiver pickup? I guess Enunwa. Enunwa is interesting because he's producing right now, but season long, I'd still rather have John Brown.
Yeah, Enunwa's the guy you want if you're like, oh, I only have 2 healthy wide receivers, and like one of them isn't performing. I need someone to fill in this week. Then I guess I'd rather have Enunwa. But yeah, John Brown for the rest of the season for sure.
Yeah, so if you have him, hold him. But, if you don't have him and you're looking for somebody that you can kind of stash that might explode this week, I mean, fantasy football, it's all about making the move before the explosion happens.
Yeah.
That's how you win your championships. If you have the foresight to pick somebody up on the waiver wire or make a trade for somebody before they explode, just by following what beat writers are saying, following game situations a little bit more closely, then that's how you're going to win. And this could be one of those moves going against Buffalo this week where you go out, you knock on the John Brown owner's door, you give them a meager offer, and they accept just because John Brown has basically done nothing. I mean, he's put up like 2 points on the season. So, I mean, if you can scoop him up, he goes off this week, then you're set.
Yeah. I am with you on the John Brown hype train. Okay, let's do another buy. Trying to decide between which of these two to go on to next. Let's do a price check on Mark Ingram.
Marky Mark.
Yes, we like him as a buy low.
Marky Mark. How disappointing his season has been so far.
It's been not a great start, for sure.
It has not been a great start. Mark Ingram, the narrative coming into the season was that he was one of these backs that would see work in the receiving game, that he would be the early down back. I mean, close to a workhorse was the narrative going into the season. Yeah. I don't know if people were saying he's going to be like an 80%, 70% guy, but the narrative was that he was going to be their pass catching back, which would give him that extra value, which is why he was taken in the 2nd round. Week 1 against Oakland, he only played in 40% of the snaps. Not good.
Yeah.
Week 2 against New York, Cadet was still eating into his passing time, but he did see some more targets, which was promising.
That's kind of the silver lining, is that he got the most targets on the team still. He got 4 targets, and he had the biggest share of the carries too. They only carried the ball 13 times, which is really weird, but he got 9 of those 13 carries. So you assume that the running volume has to go up some. Like, they're not going to be limited to 13 carries a game regularly, and so if he continues with that sort of market share of the carries, then he should bounce back.
I mean, I'm looking at New Orleans, and I'm thinking that they need to kind of look at what they have right now.
Yeah.
Basically, against Oakland, we saw this. They were just passing the ball with will because they knew that they had to run up the score because their defense wasn't going to do anything.
Right.
But another way to look at it is like, okay, you just need to keep your defense off the field at this point. Yes, you have an elite quarterback in Drew Brees who releases the ball with insane accuracy, really, and he's kind of a gunslinger. Even though he's like 80 years old, he's still incredibly effective.
Yeah.
You have a solid receiving core, and you have Mark Ingram. I mean, the recipe is there to be a good running team. Their offensive line is mediocre, let's be honest, but still, with their threats in the receiving game, they can spread the field and then let Mark Ingram pound the rock. I think they do. Okay, look, the Saints, from a football perspective, are 0-2. If they want to turn their season around, then they need to look at kind of controlling the clock a little bit more, trying to eat up time in the running game, keep their defense off the field. To be honest, their defense didn't perform too poorly against New York. That whole shootout narrative going into the game just fell flat on its face.
Yeah.
Now, they only gave up 16 points, but I don't think anyone is fooled by that and thinking that, all of a sudden, New Orleans has a great defense. Yeah, nobody's saying that. So Mark Ingram, to me, right now, is definitely a buy low.
Yeah.
Especially with the way that, running backs are just falling off left and right. Well, actually, all players are falling off left and right, to be fair to the running back position. It's not just the running backs.
Yeah, the good news with Mark Ingram is he's healthy, and he's getting the majority of the carries on his team. And none of these are, like, electric running backs begging for carries behind him. He doesn't have, like, Derrick Henry behind him, who, like, the situation with DeMarco Murray, where if he starts to underperform, he's going to lose work to Derrick Henry. That's not going to happen to Mark Ingram with Tim Hightower and Travaris Cadet behind him. He will continue to get the majority of carries. And the Giants seem to have a pretty sneaky good run defense this year, which is kind of surprising. But if you look at if you look at the Saints,
I was just going to say they stuffed Zeke.
Oh.
Sorry. It's all delayed. Skype, good job.
Yeah, they stuffed Zeke, stuffed all of the Saints, but now his upcoming schedule in the next 2 weeks are Atlanta and San Diego, and we just saw the Raiders run all over Atlanta pretty easily. San Diego, we saw Ware do it in week 1, and they've had a horrible run defense for years, so these should be 2 bounce back weeks for him. It's sort of like the touchdowns are coming, he's getting majority of the workload. And you hope that the Saints know they have to give him more than, 9 carries a game. He's one of those running backs that seems to get better the more touches he gets, too.
Yeah, I'm in on Mark Ingram, and like you said, he might go off in the next couple weeks. With all of these star players, the line is so thin. Like, your opportunity to get them is so small, because if they all of a sudden blow up, then right away the owner's like, okay, they're back.
Yeah.
That's all I need to see 1 week. Like with Todd Gurley, if he goes off this week, people are going to be like, oh, he's back. He's elite again.
Yeah.
That's all it takes in fantasy, short-term memory.
Yeah.
So Mark Ingram, now's the time. The time is ripe.
Yeah, the question is, who do you sell high, or who do you sell period to buy Mark Ingram? I think based off his production, you might be able to sling like do you think Willie Snead would be able to get you Mark Ingram? Or is that like a pipe
Saints
dream?
trade? I mean, it might on a wide receiver needy team.
Yeah,
you might be able to slang Snead for Ingram. You might be able to trade. I mean, I kind of like the whole notion of getting 2 big pieces for a guy like Matt Forte.
All right.
Like, you could probably get like a Ingram and a Allen Robinson for Matt Forte right now, which would be a great deal. But in terms of guys that are lower tier, who would I trade right now to get Mark Ingram? Jeez, I don't know. I was going to say like Freeman, but that might kind of end up being a lateral move at this point.
Yeah, it's hard to say. The old Atlanta situation is so murky because it looked like Coleman was going to just run away with the job after week 1, but then Freeman outplayed him in week 2. And so it's like, is this just going to continue to be this split again, actually? Like right now it's looking like it's just going to be an even split.
I think it is. I mean, it seems to be working for their offense. Freeman looked like the better runner last week, but then Coleman was still eating into his time. Coleman was the one who scored the touchdown. They played about 50% each again, so it's not a good situation in Atlanta right now. I don't know. I might try to trade like Crow for Ingram.
You could probably do like Crow plus, like that. When I'm, 2-for-1s are always the best kinds of trades to make. 'Cause you're also opening up a bench spot, so then you pick someone up. But yeah, Crow plus like maybe you package in like a wide receiver, like Crow plus Snead. I don't know why we keep pointing out Snead.
You just Snead, yeah, Crow plus Snead. Yeah. Or you might be able to go Crow plus, who's another wide receiver that had, I don't know, Crow plus Mike Wallace.
That might get it done. Yeah, I mean, it
might get it done.
Yeah, it's more team specific. You really kind of got to look at your team, look at exactly what they need, and then craft the trade that way. Not like, Bench Stash said these 2 players will get me Ingram, and I have them. Let's try it. Yeah, it's.
I mean, Crow for Ingram 1-for-1 is what you do. Try it.
After you whole spiel about, I offered too much just to see how it goes. You're like, now try Crow for Ingram.
Crow for I mean, if you look at it, Crow for Ingram, it's not hateful at this point.
Based off of just the raw numbers, it's not a bad offer. I'd be surprised if the Ingram owner took it though, just because Ingram's a name and Crow's not a name. Just like all it's going to take for Gurley or Ingram is one good week for people to be like, they're back. All it's going to take for Crow is one bad week for people to be like, nope, never mind, he's awful.
Yeah, which could happen this week, unfortunately.
It's not going to happen. They're going to go so run heavy. Crow's going to explode like a diaper.
You think Miami's going to be worried about the Cleveland passing game with no Coleman, no Gordon, no quarterback?
Terrell Pryor can play quarterback and wide receiver.
I saw that. I saw that in Oakland, man. Terrell Pryor is just going to be thrown to himself. We could have a situation where Julian Edelman and Terrell Pryor both play quarterback in the same week. Boom.
Is Terrell Pryor the emergency quarterback for the Browns? Who's their?
No, they went out and got a clipboard Jesus.
Oh, that's right, they did. Oh God. The thing with Cody Kessler though is that we don't know. We're just assuming he's bad because he's a rookie and he was the 3rd string quarterback. We're just assuming he's awful. There's a little ambiguity here.
Cleveland.
And he's on Cleveland. But he could come out and actually be good. Who was a 3rd round rookie quarterback once?
Oh God, here we go.
Russell Wilson.
It? Oh man, yeah, but Cleveland. I feel bad.
Cleveland has drafted some good players. Coleman looked like he was going to be good before his hand exploded.
In practice too, they just can't catch a break.
We're
talking about practice, man.
Breaking your hand in practice is I want to know the exact details of how he broke his hand in practice. What's going on? What are the trainers doing there that this is what happens?
Yeah, what is going on in practice this year? I mean, Teddy blew out his knee in practice. Mm-hmm. His knee just is not there anymore.
No.
I don't know what he did.
He's down a knee. Yeah.
And then Coleman breaking his hand? Come on, man. This shouldn't be happening in practice. Cleveland. Practice, man.
Let's do one more buy low before we wrap this up. And that is going to be, this is another guy that you should be able to get just for free. And that is price check on Chris Ivory.
Price check on Chris Ivory, who might have been dropped after week 2.
I've seen that happen, in a league. In this league that we're both
in one league that we're in, yes.
But that's kind of the point, is that he's kind of the same version of, he's like John Brown light in that sense of he hasn't played the game, period. He's been in the hospital for undisclosed reasons, which is really sketchy.
That's the sketchy part, but I think at this point you can go out and try to get Chris Ivory for a low piece on your bench or just a bench piece, because you want players like Chris Ivory on your bench
Mm-hmm.
who will come in. I don't know about this week because, I mean, he's barely practiced.
Yeah.
So, now is the time to get him, really, because if he comes in and shows, anything, maybe he splits the time with Yeldon this week. Maybe he just gets a few carries to kind of warming him up a little bit, and he looks good. Then people, with the way Yeldon's played, Jacksonville needs somebody in the running game. And right now, I think their plan is for Chris Ivory to be that guy. And owners of Chris Ivory probably aren't impressed. The general medical issues might be scaring them.
Yeah.
So he's definitely somebody you can go out and make an offer for, and you don't really need to sacrifice that much off your bench. Or actually, let's talk about a player we mentioned earlier.
Oh.
Jeremy Langford.
Yeah.
For Chris Ivory. I would make that trade.
I don't think I'd do that yet. I mean, I want to buy Chris Ivory. It's less that. It's not that I like Langford more than Ivory. It's that I just think you can get more for Langford than Ivory. And you
might be able to. But
and you could probably buy Ivory for less than Langford.
You probably could, to be honest.
I mean,
who is the name that you would trade for Chris Ivory?
Oh man, like wide receiver wise, if we're gonna do it like that. Like Golden Tate, I would probably trade for Chris Ivory. He's been just so disappointing, but he is like a name. Like Alan Hearns, I'd give up.
You like trading on the same team, within the same team, don't you? Snead for Ingram, Hearns
really
for
like
Ivory.
That. Like, oh, let me get a different part of this offense.
Yeah.
You know who I would trade, actually, that I think would get it done is like Emmanuel Sanders. I think I would do that for Ivory. Because he still has like the name of like, oh, Emmanuel Sanders, but that I don't really want a piece of that receiving offense right now. So I think I would do that.
Yeah. I mean, I would give Langford up, but then I might be biased because I would take anyone for Langford at this point.
I mean, who's someone else? Would you rather have Chris Ivory or Rashad Jennings the rest of the way?
I guess at this point I would have to say Jennings, just because of the offense. They're a high-scoring offense. We don't know what Jacksonville is going to be yet this season. They haven't looked good. A-Rob has kind of regressed. Bortles is the same guy he was last year, where heavily reliant on garbage time for anything. I don't know. I think Ivory's going to be the sneaky, like, early down and goal line back.
Oh, yeah.
That you can go out and get on the cheap right now. You don't even have to start him, but just having that luxury of a potential starter on your bench, then that is highly valuable.
Yeah, this is less about even because we haven't seen Ivory this year. Who knows how good he's going to be? But this is less about him almost, and more about how bad Yeldon's been filling in for him. I mean, in week 1, he got 21 carries for a whopping 39 yards, 1.8 yards a carry. That's awful. And you can say, oh, well, he's like, he's a receiving back. That's more of his thing. Well, in week 2 against San Diego, he got 8 catches for 10 yards. Like, Yeldon has been horrific
PPR
this year.
monster.
Yeah, no, thank you, Yeldon. So it's almost like the opportunity's there. Yeldon was this popular 0 RB target, which, like, the 0 RB lobby is just stop talking about Yeldon after these last 2 weeks. Now that it's like, oh, wait, this isn't happening with Yeldon. But he was like a really popular target because it's like, well, he's a pass catcher. If he gets his opportunity, he'll run away with the job. Well, he got his opportunity, and he fell flat on his face. So
yeah, Yeldon has been not impressive whatsoever. And last week should have been the game. Prime for a pass-catching back like TJ Yeldon. They were down the entire game. He did get the catches, but he went nowhere with them.
Yeah.
And his yards per carry after 2 games is 2.4, which is like replaceable status for a running back. That's like you go out and pick up Dexter McCluster on the waiver wire, and he's better than TJ Yeldon.
Yeah.
It hasn't been good, and if Chris Ivory shows that he is healthy, I think they're going to completely just give him the ship, essentially. They'll sprinkle in Yeldon because Ivory's kind of one of those violent runners who definitely needs to be spelled a period of time. But I think you'll see him come in. He'll be the first down back. He'll be the second down back. He'll be the goal line back. Might even take some third down. I mean, if it's short yardage, they're giving it to Chris Ivory. So Yeldon's playing time is going to decrease significantly. Ivory is kind of, I mean, he's in that RB3, low RB2 range, but he has a potential to work his way up to the mid RB2 range with his possible role in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Ivory's ability to have these games where he explodes for huge games, at least early in the season when he's healthy. I think Ivory's a prime buy low. Okay, I think it's time to put a bow on this. To wrap her up.
But another thing with Ivory before we end is if he does come back and he has a couple of those games, because he is the type of runner that gets injured really easily or slows down as the season progresses. We saw that happen last year in New York, right? He started off guns blazing, was one of the best running backs in fantasy for like the first half of the season.
Yeah.
And then he really slowed down. Bilal Powell became a huge part of the offense in New York. And then they just went ahead and let him go this offseason. So Ivory could come in, fresh. He hasn't been taking hits. Who knows what his medical issue is, but let's disregard that. He's in prime football condition. In my narrative, he is. Just go with me. He comes out, he puts up a few solid weeks, and then you flip him.
Yeah. He's a perfect candidate for that, for sure. Let him sort of reestablish himself in the RB2 conversation and then sell him before he potentially gets hurt again. Yeah, we saw that last year. He slowed down significantly after the first month of the season.
Yeah, because he's like Marshawn Lynch. He just runs at people's face.
Marshawn Lynch is a good comparison, except that Lynch in his prime, it didn't hurt him at all to do it.
Yeah, he was a freak of nature.
I miss him every day.